something had been brought up to me recently in episode 6 of my podcast series on how to evangelize. And I had talked about how when John uses the word their logos, it means idea, right? And I even gave some other verses. And technically, literally, it is idea. But people were kind of concerned, and some that are close to me, like, oh, is he saying that God's word essentially isn't inspired? And no, that's not what I was saying. And in fact, that is an important point. Like, yes, God's word is inspired. I even mentioned that in the verse, like every word is important. It's true. It's just my point was that the ideas make God's word important, the ideas that he put in. But our understanding of the word idea, so our idea of the word idea is not what I was talking about. I was talking about something theological when I'm supposed to just doing apologetics, and I was talking about it in a philosophical way. That's because if this ever gets brought up, I can tell a guy, well, I don't care if there are mistakes in the Bible because either you understood it incorrectly because the meaning is what's important here, right? You need to understand the context, or it was a translation error, which men can do often. But even further than that, even if there were an error in the Bible, that doesn't make Christianity wrong. Jesus Christ rose from the dead, right? Even if the Bible were just historical, I don't believe it is, and I don't think it has errors. I believe the logic is preserved. I believe the words are preserved in the translation. The way that God does it is amazing. What I'm going to say, what translation I use, you know what? That doesn't matter. I just say go with a really well done formal equivalence writing to do for study, and then a dynamic equivalence for when it's more difficult to read. In other words, if you just have a hard time reading. But that's the thing is, like, we're talking about God's word here. Why is it limited to one translation? That was my whole point, is that you can't limit God's word, and that's why you can trust it, because it's not something that we can necessarily grasp. Even if God's words are preserved, we still can't understand that, because you're talking about translating into multiple languages. Like, how is that preserved? We don't understand that, okay? So just realize that I didn't mean any offense against God's word, and I didn't mean to make any of you offended, but that the logos is important. It's if we don't have the logic, then the words don't mean anything, and the words are pointless. So God did both. They're synonymous. The logic and the words are both very important. And if we have neither of them, if we don't have the words, we can't understand it. If we don't have the logos, then we also can't understand it. Either one is still very important, and God's word can last through eternity. We're talking about an infinite being here. Something that you should all realize is that everything that I say should be taken with a massive grain of salt. Just because I say it doesn't mean it's true. And secondly, I don't usually try to talk about theology. I try to talk about apologetics that you can give to people. Sometimes I talk about theology just because that's how you understand it as a Christian. I always clarify that in my videos, that this is for Christians. This is for talking to the lost. People who take this reason and they won't accept your theology. They'll take philosophy, but not theology. So you need to be able to convert theology into philosophy correctly and give them proper reasoning why they should trust the Bible in the first place. So instead, you should just study it for yourself. Read God's word for yourself and do your best in that. I'm just giving you some ideas and concepts that might help you in your evangelizing and bringing up some verses that are pretty important in this area. So I appreciate you all taking me with such grace.